foods. You're not going to feel like runny eyes hay fever, but you might eat them, and several days later, you might feel a little tired and not know it. I've been tested. I test myself about every year or 2 years. And I have eggs and apples that shows up every time. And I can eat eggs and apples. But if I eat eggs and apples, more so eggs, 4 days in a row, I will feel tired the next day. And it's hard for me to associate that it came from there unless I did the test. We're kind of funny that way. Our mind associates what we did that day. It doesn't think of accumulation of it. Deficiencies, toxins, environmental emotions and stress. 90% of everything I see has a stress component. People underestimate how much energy it takes to be in a negative thought. Okay, so that's a person, that's a standard person all through the day. Now when I say a standard person here, their immune system, their nervous system, cardiovascular system, muscle system, digestive system, hormonal system, lymphatic system, all these other systems. And if you notice, I put them in boxes because only in the current medical system do we treat boxes. Who do we go to with it when you have an immune problem? An immunologist, a nervous problem, a neurologist, a cardiologist, a rheumatologist, a gastroenterologist, an endocrinologist. There's an ist for every ache. We put people in boxes, and we treat boxes, and we give them boxes of things to take home. And it's unfortunate because these boxes talk to each other. Everybody knows that. The head's connected to the body, right? Everybody know that? I don't need a double-blind study to show that to you? All right. Either way, these are all connected. In one of the lectures that I talk about the hormones, like in the thyroid, there's a link to every one of these to the thyroid function. Thyroid's a big one in females. At least 20 to 30% of the female population is walking around with an underdiagnosed thyroid condition that will not be caught for another 5 years. In other words, 5 years of suffering. Either way, if these are not optimized, you'd be considered to aging faster than you should, faster than you deserve to, which means more disease, more suffering. Everybody loses. So it's a balance. It's a balance between what we call a survival mode and a thriving mode. In survive mode, your body is thinking it's in danger in some way. If you're in an environment with smoke, that's surviving mode. If your blood sugar drops, that's surviving mode. If you're thinking about a negative thought, it's survival mode. If you're remembering a negative thought that happened to you, like I got into a car accident, say, and then a year later I see a car that looks like the same car, but my body still thinks I'm going to get into it. Mind's kind of funny that way. The mind actually doesn't know the difference between a current thought and a past thought, a current hurt and a past hurt. So your body's either in a state of surviving or thriving. And it's kind of funny because in a state of surviving, it makes certain hormones and cofactors to survive. It also gains weight in survival mode because it thinks you're going to die. Chronic danger means your body tries to gain weight, and weight is usually a protection. In thriving mode, your body tries to gain muscle. So difference. In one day, you can go back and forth to survive and thrive. And that's how it works. If I did 99 things that put me into a catabolic surviving mode, and 100 things in the same day that put me into an anabolic thriving mode, a repair mode, at that end of the day, I would have won. I would have won that day. And that's how the body accumulates damage. It's not just one thing that kills you. It's an accumulation of several hundred things over time. Either way, the amount of time you're trying to be here. So all the things that do that. So basics of disease is the balance between damage and repair. If your body repaired as fast as it damaged, you would just wear out, which, by the way, we are genetically supposed to be able to last to about 130 years before we just spontaneously combust or something, right? I'm just kidding. We don't do that, okay? Excessive toxins. You guys were really good. Do you really? Excessive toxins, hormonal imbalance, and nutritional deficiencies. Those are your basics. And then stress again. Stress just means change. There's emotional stress. There's physiological stress when the blood sugar drops. There's environmental stress. There's all these different kinds of stressors, and we're hit on them all the time. But either way, all these together, you'll form more damage, more free radicals, more inflammation. Who knows what I mean by inflammation? Let's give a crash course. Inflammation just means if I have a little cut here, if I nick myself with a little knife, and I get red right there, right? I'll get some redness. That redness is my body reacting to that cut, my body reacting to the damage. It sends out dun-dun-dun, soldiers to try to heal it. Well, that happens also everywhere in our body, in arteries, in coronary arteries, in our brain, in our tissue. It happens 24 hours a day, all the time, because our body is always being exposed to toxins and things that it has to fix, and it's always going after it with the immune system. So an immune response leads to an inflammatory response. An overimmune response or too much inflammation leads to disease. Small one, okay. Large one, damage. Some of the theories that we're going to talk about, free radicals, which we kind of all have heard about at least at one time, but free radicals just mean like exhaust in the car. They're normal. There's many different types of free radicals. They're like exhaust in the car, and they actually happen all the time. However, in excess, like standing behind a bus or smoking all the time or stressing, you have excessive amounts of free radicals. Of course, the opposite of free radicals would be antioxidants, like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, and that's what they do, so they actually help out. By the way, who's heard that vitamin C is useless and you just pee it out? Can't tell me how many times I've heard that. Okay, just to give you a crash course, a lot of vitamins do multiple things in the body, but vitamin E is an antioxidant. It protects the cell, and vitamin E sticks out of every cell. Every cell in your body has vitamin E sticking out of it, and it acts as a guard, a sentry, to basically protect the cell. And so what it does is that if there's a free radical or something that tries to attack the cell is really smart. It donates a piece of itself and says, I'm going to give you a piece of this vitamin E so you don't go after me. Is that pretty smart? The body's smart, right? The body's not dumb. But of course, when that vitamin E then has a piece of out of itself, it is then missing something. So what we have, just a crash course, we've got a cell with vitamin E in it. It now is missing something because it donated or sacrificed a piece of itself. Now it becomes what's called a free radical. Then you have vitamin C coming along, and the vitamin C then donates a piece of itself to the vitamin E to regenerate the vitamin E inside the cell. And then vitamin C then gets excreted out. In other words, it becomes a free radical, the vitamin C. So what you're really doing is, with the vitamin C, you're regenerating the vitamin E in the cell so the E membrane and cell remains intact. So you want to pee out your vitamin C after it regenerated the vitamin E. So any doctor who says taking vitamin C is useless, you just pee it out, they're basically saying, I don't understand biochemistry, or I forgot that, because that's just biochemistry. But every cell has vitamin E sticking out of it. Cross-linking. There's a test for this. And on occasion, I'll give you some test names. Something's called CRP. C-reactive protein is a measure of inflammation. That's a standard one. And also, for cross-linking, you measure using something called glycosylated hemoglobin H1AC. H1AC is a measure of this cross-linking. And you want it less than 6%. Anything around 6% means that you have a significant amount of cross-linking or cells that are actually becoming stiff. The worst thing you ever want to have happen to your cells in your brain and your tissue and your heart is from going from flexible to stiff, because enzymes don't work, things don't communicate. It's reversible. That's the great thing about this stuff, is that everything I'm mentioning, even though it might sound kind of depressing at the beginning, is all reversible. And endocrine, which means hormones. This is a test. I ran some, these are called heavy metal tests. And chelation is a procedure where you remove heavy metals. It's a very controversial procedure. Again, this whole clinic is controversial. All I do is controversial things, so of course it's controversial. But I've done over 5,000 chelations. I stopped counting after 5,000, and I have never had a problem, and I love it, but it has to be used in the correct way. But so chelation is a procedure that removes heavy metals. This is a test that I did July 23rd, May 21st, and August 15th. Just randomly grabbed 3 patients. And this is where I just did 2 tests on them and measured, by them collecting their urine for 24 hours, how much heavy metal came out of them. This was one lady that was 61, so the other lady was 70, another lady that was 67. If you take a look, each one of them had an average of cadmium, heavy metals, 20 times higher than they should. Lead, 10 times higher than they should. Now, just to give you an idea, heavy metals damage tissue. They damage enzymes. They affect oxygen going to the tissue. They affect nerves. You age faster. And heavy metals just don't leave because you want them to. They're bound to tissues. It's not like doing a fast or getting rid of fat that gets rid of toxins and pesticides. Heavy metals like to be there, and they stay around. So there's not too many ways to get rid of them except through some kind of chelating agent.
Where do they come from?
Just ordinary wear and tear, like leaded gasoline, leaded paint. And also mercury came, for instance, we didn't talk about mercury here, but mercury comes from the teeth. If you've got the average, for instance, filling in your mouth has 7 to 10 micrograms of mercury vapor. And if you've got older fillings, they release more. So mercury comes from fish, environment, just basically industrial living. Yeah. Cadmium from smoking, secondhand smoke, biggest one. Time magazine, 2004. Look at the secret killer. The surprising link between inflammation and heart attacks, cancer, and Alzheimer's and other diseases. Well, heart attacks and cancer and Alzheimer's, and you put diabetes in there, that's 90 to 95% of every disease. That's called chronic. So we're not saying the secret link between cholesterol and heart disease. We already know there's a link. And I need to say something between cause and related. Let's go through, because cholesterol does not cause a heart attack. It, however, is related to a heart attack. And it's related, let's give you the difference. When you have if you had an apartment and it was on fire, Who would be the first people that show up at that fire besides you? Firemen, right? Right? Well, just because you see firemen at a fire